So some of the common challenges obviously around science. So we talked about that, look, not everything is coming from science, right? So if someone says, I only go for what science tells me, that's not true. I already shared examples with you about it, like how do you know who your mother is, who your father is? Is this a scientific knowledge, or you know it because you believe so? How do you choose the donut that you're going to buy, the flavor? Who are you going to propose, marry, date, what have you? These are not things that people come up from science. Science is not the only way to discover truth. There are many other ways to discover truth as well. So as an example, should you help this child if you can? Right? If the answer is yes, is this a scientific knowledge? You know, this knowledge of, like, you know, so people believe that there's China, right? I haven't been to China, but I know there's China. Like, how do I know it is China? Like, is there a scientific experiment I've done that there's China? This is like rationality. So this principle that if all A are B and all B's are C's, then all A are, this is transitivity property, which everybody believes in, from common sense and logic and rationality. Is this a scientific knowledge? Okay. So what is science then, right? So science is trying to understand nature and coming up with theories based on experimentation. So you will do a lot of different experimentation, and based on that you come up with a theory that, okay, look, this is, I think, how things work. There's an electron and it revolves, it has a negative charge, there's a proton, what have you. And that's fine, it keeps working until you invent something else that can help you see better, or you come across an experiment that negates your previous hypothesis. That's how science works. So we also have to understand that science is not absolute, which means that even if science was to say something, so now we're talking about science in the Quran, right? So if science has a statement, that statement can change over time. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is, Quran is not the book of science. It's addressing common people, so don't take it as literal scientific journal. Okay? One common example would be if I ask you what time is sunset, quickly, 6:20-ish, but sun doesn't set. But when we talk in common language, we understand what I mean by sunset. So the Quran would talk in common language, it wouldn't be using scientific precise knowledge. The reason this is important is someone may interpret it to say something about science, and then science contradicts it. Now two things can happen. Maybe science will change over time, and B, you interpreted that verse to mean that it's a scientific statement, but it wasn't. As an example, some people can read Quran and think that the earth is flat. But is Quran saying that the earth is flat, or is it someone's interpretation of it? So that's something to always keep that in mind, that if science and Quran contradicts, one of the two things may be happening. Maybe you interpreted it and Quran never claimed that, you read too much into it, or B, science may evolve over time as well. So, and there are some examples of like big changes and big revelations in science where you used to believe one thing and then it totally changed over time. Some people say, oh, science works, it's true. That's not true, right? Something can work. So as an example, someone may design a pacemaker and say, look, it should work. We have done all the research, we have done all the testing, and someone else comes in and finds a flaw that, look, if the circumstances are this and that, then your pacemaker will not work. And that happens all the time. The FaceTime vulnerability, right? It was working. Someone found a way and showed that it doesn't work. So the point being that, look, science, when it comes to the past, right? When you're examining the past, we were talking about the creation of Adam alayhi salam. This is something that happened in the past. So now what's happening is what would happen when you watch a forensic drama. Right? You see a murder happening, people coming in, and they're looking at different evidences, and they're coming up with theory, and then they're coming up with the best explanation. And sometimes, based on that, you may even put someone into jail. But as more knowledge comes out, then you realize that that decision was wrong. So now what people are doing is they're saying, okay, look, scientifically speaking, maybe there was a big bang, and people came out of that, or there was evolution over time, and people came out of that, and there's nothing to contradict that theory. That's fine, because it's about past. Now, the other question would be, is there anything to contradict that they were actually created separately as Allah tells us in Quran? There's nothing to contradict that either. Then the question becomes, what is more likely? What would your heart pick?